It kind of feels like I'm starting life over again. After graduating college and moving to a new city, everything I once had comfort in knowing has more or less changed, and now replaced with new routines, a new job, and new people I'm surrounded by. Change is really hard, probably one of the hardest things I continue to have to accept. There is something so comforting and simultaneously agonizing in realizing that the only constant we will experience in our lives is that of change. To know that the pain you feel will soon subside, but so will the feeling of comfort and content. It is enough to drive me insane, honestly. I waited so long to make a video about navigating change because I wanted to have everything figured out first. That's what I told myself. But then after 3 months of staring at a blank Google Doc sheet, I realized I probably wasn't going to find the answer for how to constantly overcome the struggles of change anytime soon. But there is still something I want to share. So, I'm not going to sit here and act like I don't still struggle with facing hardship and the new beginnings in my life, but I have realized something through this period, and that is the importance of curiosity. So, if I were to ask you, hypothetical viewer, what is it that makes humans so unique compared to other animals? And after some thought, you may answer, well, it's probably our vast desire to understand and subsequently find meaning in the world we live in. And you'd be very correct to say that. As humans, we are incredibly unique in our profound level of curiosity, one that goes far beyond merely survival. Unlike other animals, we uniquely engage with philosophy, religion, and art. And in doing so, we beg the questions to find deeper understanding for our world. The most interesting explanation I found for this requires us to take a big step back in our biological history, with a term in evolutionary theory known as Neoteny. So, practically all animals go through a developmental process called ontogeny, where, rather than just being small versions of their adult selves that grow in size over time, animals change physiologically as they mature, all triggered by the animal's hormones. That is ontogeny. Juvenile traits are lost over time and are replaced by adult ones. Neoteny, however, is a mutation in one's genes, where animals carry juvenile traits with them into maturity. As unusual as this idea may sound, there are numerous animals that are neotenic. A common example of artificial neotenic animals are domesticated dogs, through intentional breeding of specific genes. So, how do humans play into this? Well, we are neotenic, specifically in our skulls. We see this best when comparing our skulls to our close relatives, the great apes. To quote TREY the explainer in his video, Ontogeny and Neoteny,
when juvenile apes are first born, they possess weak jaws that are unable to produce much strength or power for crushing things like food. However, as these apes grow older, muscle development in the jaw begins, as the temporal muscle gets larger and the sagittal crest on the top of the skull where the muscle attaches to becomes more and more prevalent. The sagittal crest elongation causes the cranium to become narrower. This jaw development sadly reduces the size of the cranium and subsequently the size of the brain.
With humans, however, mutations in our DNA caused us to never develop stronger jaws, therefore not reducing the size of our cranium. We retained our weak little infant jaws, and this allows for the prioritization of a larger brain to develop then. This is why we look so much like the juvenile forms of chimpanzees and bonobos before they mature. This has allowed, through evolution, for our brains to develop remarkable cognitive abilities. We developed fine motor skills, language production and comprehension, abstract thinking, and most importantly for this video, awareness. With our intelligence, we have an unprecedented ability to understand the world that is incomparable to other brains. As time has gone on, humans have been able to use their abilities to discover, learn, and teach the wonders of the world. I believe this is one of our greatest gifts, but it also can act simultaneously as our Achilles heel. I believe this because our unique desire to understand the world can be anxiety-inducing, because when you think about it, knowledge truly can be a paradox. The more you learn, the more you realize how vast your ignorance once was, and might still be. So, what happens when our desire to understand is met with a lack of conclusion? Friedrich Nietzsche famously said, "God is dead. God remains dead, and we have killed him." This refers to the rise of secularism in the late 1800s, which is the philosophical and political belief that religion should be separated from other aspects of life, especially within government and the political realm. Through time, our ability to discover and communicate help people understand the world medically, psychologically, and philosophically even, allowing people to stray more away from an all-encompassing understanding of the world through religion. You'd think this is a victory, and for some, it truly was. But secularism is not without problems, because even though this accomplishment gave way to become more aware of ourselves in the grand scheme of things, none of these revelations helped people to understand the meaning of everything we are aware of, the point in all of it. Sure, I can understand psychologically why I feel depressed sometimes, or medically what may trigger my headaches when I get them, but then what? What is the deeper meaning of my depression? What is the point of why my head hurts? If they are truly meaningless in the grand scheme of the universe, aren't I as well? These inevitable thoughts caused more and more people to face a conflict deemed as the absurd, a term used by absurdist philosophers. That moment where people search for meaning in the world and are met back with its indifference and silence. When we plan our lives and futures and then are met with the surprise of something new, or the heartbreak of a sudden loss. That is the absurd. This rise in the idea that life is without a higher power, and subsequently without a predefined meaning, led more and more people to face the absurd. There is no comfort in a plan that is larger than ourselves. And with that comes nihilism. Nihilism is a branch of philosophy that holds the belief that there is truly no meaning in the world, and therefore there is no point in a pursuit to find it. Nihilists are known for their pessimism and skepticism, holding no loyalties for systems and believing all values are baseless, as they all exist in a world without meaning. I think this scene from Parasite encapsulates in a great way the feeling of becoming aware of the absurd, and then falling into nihilism because of it.
그 계획이 있다고 하셨잖아요. 어떡하실 거예요, 거기? 자식.
나 절대 실패하지 않는 계획이 만절하네. 무계획이야, 무계획. 노 플랜. 왜냐? 계획을 하면 반드시 계획대로 안 되거든, 인생이. 여기도 봐봐. 이 많은 사람들이 오늘 떼거지로 체육관에서 접시다 계획을 했었겠냐? 근데 지금 봐. 말이지. 마룻바닥에서 저자고 있잖아. 우리도 그렇고. 그러니까 계획이 없어야 돼, 사람은. 계획이 없으니까 뭐가 잘못될 일도 없고, 또 애초부터 아무 계획이 없으니까 뭐가 터져도 다 상관없는 거야. 사람을 죽이건 나라를 팔아먹건 시발 다 상관없다 이 말이지. 알겠어?
So, that's depressing. Because truly, how do we grapple with such a desire to live a meaningful life in a world that is so indifferent to you? I think nihilism is a very interesting philosophy, and it is one I full-heartedly disagree with. I think that is because it is a philosophy that holds so much certainty. Nihilists, in my opinion, find comfort in their cynicism for the world, because believing in a world where there is no point in pursuing a meaningful life based on the fact that the world is meaningless, well, that would give anyone an incredibly large incentive to never question if things could be different. I prefer to believe in existentialism. Existentialism is a philosophy that believes as well that the world is without meaning, but in so also believes that it is the freedom and responsibility for humans to therefore find their own meaning. As famous existentialist philosopher Jean-Paul Sartre puts it, man is condemned to be free. I do empathize, though, with nihilists at times, as I think we all have been cynical for the world. I believe we have all had that moment where we have faced change, whether it is a rejection from someone or the loss of something, and thought to ourselves, why bother trying again? Why bother doing something different? This is just how the world is. But that is a very damning phrase, because to the existentialist, you must be willing to face the unknown in order to find your own meaning for living. This takes me back to my point on how much humans desire to understand. With all of our self-awareness, we desire the feeling of understanding the world around us, of having a conclusion to ground ourselves with. We do this so much that we damn ourselves in a way by coming to conclusions too soon, and then living in that twisted protection of our certainty. To presume an outcome is to not have to face the unknown, and how terrifying it can feel. It is something out of our control, something we must surrender to, be vulnerable with. But the unknown is not simply negative, and that I have grown to embrace. I've had my heart broken before, more times than I'd like to think. I've had relationships with people and abruptly, without closure, and reflecting on them has made me realize how terrified I have been for being vulnerable when starting new with someone else. And honestly, I don't think I have a regret larger than that. I have denied myself many times the richness that comes with being vulnerable, to feel what I have felt fully and authentically. I have closed myself off from trying again at times, even hurting people who have truly cared for me, all because I was so certain. I honestly think I've just spent too much time sabotaging myself from being happy. I love curiosity in that way, because to me it allows me to question what I have believed to be true, and wonder if it could be different, if I could be different. I've always carried this scene from Call Me By Your Name with me, and I think it applies here more than ever.
We rip out so much of ourselves to be cured of things faster that we go bankrupt by the age of 30 and have less to offer each time we start with someone new. But to make yourself feel nothing, so as not to feel anything, what a waste.
To embrace the unknown is to accept the limits of your certainty, and that is unbelievably freeing. It is to desire more out of life, and to trust something can be different, that we ourselves can be different. Because, yeah, perhaps it is true that our certainties do help us survive, but it is our curiosity that truly helps us live.